All righty. So class, before we get started with fun stuff today, I'd like to quickly go over some of your classmates' work from earlier today, and with a couple of them share what's good or bad, and with a couple others just have up with a paragraph done up through a quote frame, right? Right. Quote frame means what? How do you quote frame? You have your topic sentence, and then what do you start doing? Introducing what? The speaker. You introduce the idea or the point that they make. And then everything after that just makes that point progressively more and more specific. So we want to take a look at these and ask ourselves a question. Do these paragraphs quote frame well or poorly? So here we go. Number one. Our brains decide when and how we lose our memories based on the meaningfulness of the image. Great. So based on that topic sentence, I'm anticipating a paragraph talking about how meaningfulness of image equates to memory sticking around or leaving. If an image is scary to someone, they might remember it for a long time. But if it's a meaningless image of a bottle of ranch, they are less likely to remember it for a long time. The writer of Why is Memory So Good and So Bad insists that memories are not eliminated equally, and explains why we're so hopeless at remembering some things and yet so awesome at remembering others. So, class, how do you feel about this quote frame?
Good up until the end of the quote.
Why is it good up until the end of the quote, Mr. Cook?
He don't give his analysis of it.
Well, we're not asking for analysis right now. Just asking to get through using a quote. Ms. Risto?
The writer of the paragraph doesn't explain why that's important.
Like Mr. Cook kind of brought up the same thing. Right now, you don't need to necessarily get to that point. You just need to get up to using the quote. That's all we're asking you to do, or all you were supposed to do for today. This one, they try to frame the quote right here. If an image is scary to someone, they might remember it for a long time, but if it's a meaningless image of a bottle of ranch, they are less likely to remember it for a long time. Does that sentence do a good job of making this first sentence more specific? Give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'll read both sentences again. And the goal of this second sentence is to make the first sentence more specific. Our brains decide when and how we lose our memories based on the meaningfulness of an image. If an image is scary to someone, they might remember it for a long time. But if it's a meaningless image of a bottle of ranch, they are less likely to remember it for a long time. Do we like it or not? Yes, we should like it. Okay? They take this first idea, memories based on meaningfulness of image, and they make it more specific. So if that's a scary image, we're more likely to remember it. If it's just an image of any old bottle of ranch, we're not likely to remember it. Now, we have to ask ourselves the next question. Does this quote do a good job of making things more specific? The writer, blah, blah, memories are not eliminated equal, and explains why we're so hopeless at remembering some things and yet so awesome at remembering others. Is that a good quote for this topic sentence? No.
No.
It is not. Why is it not a good quote, Liv?
Well, it says memories are not eliminated equal. That's not even really referring to how you remember some things that are more emotionally triggering than
Right.
others.
At best, this quote is kind of just restating what was mentioned in the topic sentence, right? And it certainly is not giving us more information about the whys and the hows of memories being eliminated. So this paragraph, we got a good topic sentence. We got a good context / quote frame. We just have selected a bad quote, a quote that doesn't do a good job of driving or adding more specificity to our topic sentence. This is what it kind of goes back to when we talked about quoting, not all quotes are created equal. Does this quote fit? Yeah, if you weren't thinking about it, would you just read this and move on? Probably, but it doesn't hold up to closer inspection. They did not do a good job of selecting a quote that fits their topic sentence. Let's see how the next person does. And just so you know, like, these examples will be posted on the classroom webpage after class today. So if you want to consult these while you're doing other stuff, more power to you. Similarly, people who can connect new visual images to pre-existing knowledge can recall the memory in more vivid details after longer intervals of time. Writer for Scientific American magazine, Julia de Freitas, claims that when people make connections within memories, the memories become more meaningful and therefore will be easier to remember for longer periods of time and more vividly. In her article, Why is Memory So Good and So Bad?, de Freitas notes that prior knowledge changes how these images are processed, allowing thousands of them to be transferred from the whiteboard of short-term memory into the bank vault of. Let's go through that one more time and ask yourself the question. So, people can connect visual images to pre-existing knowledge, can recall memory with greater detail. Writer blah, 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 blah claims that when people make connections with memories, memories can be meaningful and therefore will be easier to remember for longer periods of time and more vividly. Is that a good quote frame?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's specific and it's more in-depth than the topic sentence.
And giving us more information specific about the topic sentence. Now, does our quote match up? Prior knowledge changes how these images are processed, allowing thousands of them to be transferred from the whiteboard of short-term memory into the bank vault of long-term memory. Do we like that quote?
It's long,
Yeah.
but it's
Does it add another layer of specific evidence to this topic sentence?
Yeah.
Yes, right? And because it was framed so well, in my estimation, even though it is long, it's easy to follow along. This is logical. It makes a ton of sense. Now, to go back to what you two were talking about earlier, after this quote, they would have to talk about this idea of going from the whiteboard of short-term memory into the bank vault of long-term memory. What does that mean? Class, what does that mean? To go from the whiteboard of short-term memory to the bank vault of long-term memory.
And the things with the short-term memory can be erased like a whiteboard.
Like a whiteboard, and
Long-term memories are stored in a safe place like a bank vault.
and they can't, like, just like a bank vault, can you get something out of the long-term memory once it's there?
Withdraw.
Can you withdraw it?
Not really.
Not really, right? That once that memory's in that bank vault, it's going to stay in that bank vault. So this is a good example. All right, down here. Now, in both of these first two, the writers are doing what we've talked about in class, in that they frame their quote by, in their own words, stating the author's main point in more specific terms. Here, the writer does something different to frame their quote. And I'd like for you to see if you can't explain it to me, what this writer is doing differently to frame their quote. One form of memory is visual short-term memory, which becomes erased. If a memory is a whiteboard, visual short-term memories are the words written on it. After a certain amount of time, it is scrubbed off, erased completely. Zhang and Luck held a study to determine how people lose their short-term memory. They showed participants 3 colored squares and were then asked to recall the color of each square at longer intervals after seeing the colors. Zhang and Luck found that participants were either very precise or they completely guessed. That is, they either remembered the square's color with great accuracy or they completely forgot it. I'll just eliminate the tension. This is very well done. What did they do differently than the other 2 excerpts? Ms. Herta?
They quote me instead of just saying this is what this person said.
Okay,
Set it up in a way like that.
so they folded the quote into their own writing.
Yes.
Absolutely. What did they do differently with the quote framing, though, before we got there? Mr. Lustig?
Context.
Yeah. And what is the context?
the whiteboard.
The whiteboard and the study, right? They gave us the background information, the context about the study that gave the conclusion that reinforces their topic sentence. So instead of just trying to add more refinement to restating an author's argument, it's also okay to set up a study or set up information, provide context for conclusions that are made. Each one of these 3 also, I want to emphasize, do a good job of using signal words. Did you ever see somebody say so-and-so says? The writer insists that. That's a good signal word. It's not the writer says, the writer insists. Down here, De Freitas claims. She doesn't say something, she claims something. So each of those are also a good example of utilizing those signal words that we talked about when we were talking they say, I say stuff earlier in the semester. So here are 3 good examples. What I'm going to do right now in class, we're here for another however many minutes. Somebody remind me. This is a long day. So we get to see each other
We
for
get
an
out
hour.
at 11:50.
It's 11:50. So we're here for another 40 minutes. I'm going to cruise around. I'm going to read what you wrote today, and I'm going to give you insight. Hopefully, I'll say that's good to go. For some of you, I'll say you need to make these revisions. While I'm cruising around, class, you can begin writing another topic sentence through the quote frame. So you came to class with thesis statement and 3 topic sentences, and you turned one of those topic sentences into a paragraph through the quote frame. Do that for another one. Based on what I just talked about, you should have another idea of what makes a good quote frame. Based on what you came to class with, I'll let you know what you need to watch out for going forward. Does that make sense, one and all? Oh, yeah. White eyelashes? All right. So there we go. And if you know you did something wrong already based on what we just talked about, fix it up before I take a look at it.